What's up, world? You've stumbled upon the home of the sworn enemy of false narratives and bullcrap. I call it After the Numbers. Here on YouTube, the goal will be to go beyond just the numbers I present every weekday on Mojo 50 Radio. Sure, being right with facts, figures, and language is important, but so is arming yourself with the ways to use said facts, figures, and language in ways that will win arguments and hearts. As conservatives and or libertarians, we too often believe that just having the facts or numbers on our side is enough. Instead, I personally believe we need to start showing how these facts, figures, and language are making our points in everyday life sort of ways. We begin this journey called After the Numbers with a look at the state of reality and denial in the state of New York. Let's just say Governor Andrew Cuomo is proving to be a man with a lot to say without a lot of action when it comes to those all-important tax dollars. At issue during Monday's By the Numbers segment were these numbers. 45,810, which is the number of net people that moved out of New York between July 2017 and July 2018. 2.3 billion is the second number, which is the tax revenue lost in New York, largely thanks to those people saying bye-bye to the Empire State. Third is this number, 175 billion, which is the just proposed budget from Governor Andrew Cuomo, only for him to back off after finding out about said 2.3 billion shortfall in revenue. For most individuals, the 2018 tax year has been about adjusting to having a bit more money in your paychecks instead of getting it back in one huge check come tax day. But for states, it's been a huge spotlight on their own tax policies thanks to the federal government changing the state tax deduction allowance. That's had a major impact, but it has also proven a few very important facts along the way as well. In fact, there are three things that come to mind right away. Number one, the system of federalism that our founders created is perfectly at work when it comes to tax policy. Number two, politicians continue to be unmasked as people who love to bitch about their problems without bringing potential solutions to the table. And number three, having a few people pay the majority of taxes isn't a wise fiscal plan. We'll begin there because the budget shortfall mentioned before is due in large part to New York deciding that its top 1%ers would pay 46% of the income tax revenue that the state collects. Guess what happens when the people with the means to up and leave when your tax policies can't be covered up anymore actually leave? That's right, they take their income tax money with them, which brings us point number one on our list. So many people in America talk of our democracy, and this is a polite time to remind them, we don't live in a democracy. We live in a federal republic, and that means we have 50 different states with different policies on everything from taxes to homeschooling and everything else in life. It just so happens that we do have 50 different experiments on taxes, and the American people have the ability to see what state is or isn't charging for income taxes and make a choice on what works best for them. In the case of New York and 8 other states that have lost population in the past year, high tax costs and cost of living overall happen to be the number one reason given for bye-byes. The beauty of the federalist system is wholly at work when it comes to taxes. If you don't think what your state is doing is right, you can work to change it. And if that doesn't happen, you always have the choice to leave for somewhere that works better for you. So again, is it any wonder that the people who are bearing the burden of the majority of taxes will find a location that will be advantageous to them? But Governor Cuomo has decided that bitching about other states attracting their residents with better tax systems is the way to go. He's gone so far as to whine about Florida stealing New York's tax base. He's also taken this step further and threatened to sue the federal government, because the change in state tax write-offs disproportionately affects states that lean heavily Democrat. I hate to break it to Governor Cuomo, but your state has benefited more than most from previous tax policies thanks to being able to tax your citizens up the wazoo and watch them write it almost all off up the next level of the Federalist ladder. Should states who didn't do that under the last system sue the federal government for some sort of lost revenue then too? But nothing has driven me more insane than Cuomo's claim that there's literally nothing that he can do about it. He believes there's just two options with bad consequences. He either raises taxes even more and thus the shortfall goes away, but more citizens could leave, or he lowers tax rates, thusly allowing more people to keep more of their own money, but deal with a bigger budget shortfall. So, there is a crazy third option available to Cuomo and his ilk all across the country. You could come down in your tax rate, freeze budgets, or cut them. Close some of the loopholes that exist and magically allow more money to flow into your coffers all at the same time. You know how I know that can work? It's because the federal government did everything we just talked about short of the freeze or cut of spending for the 2017 tax year. The feds managing to close loopholes, lowering tax rates, and at the same time raked in a record-breaking $3.3 trillion in tax revenue. So, in a state like New York, what Cuomo and company would need to figure out is what is the difference between the state's tax rate and the real tax rate those pesky 1%ers pay. Then go about closing the gap between those two numbers with a combination of lowering rates and closing loopholes. You then have more money actually coming into your coffers, as well as a tax rate that may be more in line with what people would actually be willing to pay to stay in your state. As for the budget, sure, there's likely to be a temporary loss of revenue or even a need to cut a budget. But if you can become attractive to your own citizens again, what's to say you can't compete to have others come back into your state? Cuomo's real dilemma should be this: is some temporary pain worth the long-term gain? Given that politicians like Cuomo can't see beyond their next election, and for Cuomo, that's likely running for president. I doubt he'll do the necessary work to actually fix this problem. But don't worry, he'll gladly bitch and piss and moan all the way home. I hope you've enjoyed the start to After the Numbers here on YouTube. Don't forget to check me out every weekday doing By the Numbers on Mojo 50 Radio. And of course, hit that subscribe button below and apparently that notification button, since YouTube likes to make finding content hard these days. Lastly, please let me know what you think of this format and any discussion on today's topic by commenting below or hopping over to Twitter to chat with me. You can find me there at The Coppin Show.